Welcome back to Underrated History, folks. This is Jason, and I told you this is going to be an interesting one today, and I will just deliver the name right off the top here. Today's Underrated History is Steve Buscemi, and you're looking at this like, wait a minute, I know who the hell that is, and most of you probably do. Of course, Steve Buscemi is a much acclaimed, much appreciated actor. But that's not the underrated part of his history. Of course, everybody knows him from Boardwalk Empire and from being in supporting roles. And two of my favorites of his were with The Wedding Singer and with God, I keep forgetting here. The Wedding Singer, and Fargo. The two supporting roles I think he really shined in personally. Obviously, you can't forget Boardwalk Empire in that HBO series as well. But what is the underrated part of his story? Well, the underrated part of his story actually happened on September 12th of 2001, which was the day after the World Trade Center attacks. On that date, Buscemi reported to his former firehouse, which is company number 55, in Little Italy section of Manhattan. And he reported, because he had worked for this fire company, for that particular company, between 1980 and 1984. So before he became an actor, before he hit it big, he was actually taking acting auditions and lessons in the evening hours outside of his shifts. So when the World Trade Center fell on September 11th of 2001, Buscemi just was absolutely called to action. And he reported to company number 55 in Manhattan, Little Italy. And what he did next is the underrated part. First, he refused all press inquiries, refused all interviews. He didn't want to be bothered. What he did next was 2 straight weeks of 12-hour shifts sifting through rubble at the World Trade Center Ground Zero site, primarily searching for his fellow firefighters, his brothers, if you will. And that was his mission at this point. Dozens and dozens of them, of course, were trapped in the respective towers as they fell. They were trapped in the towers because even though they had an opportunity to get out, those firefighters, of course, as you probably realize by now, they stayed to try to save as many as they possibly could. And so Buscemi worked at Ground Zero 12-hour days, and I believe it was 14 consecutive days. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And he didn't want anybody to really know that he was there. This was a part of his underrated history that he really didn't want anybody to know about. Partially because he didn't want to be interrupted by media because he was on such an intense mission. Second of all, he was doing it for his former brothers in firefighting. He didn't want anybody interrupting that. He didn't want any publicity. None. So therefore, refusing all interviews, refusing all inquiries, and he just went and did some of the most intense and disturbing work probably anybody in the last 100 years has had to do. We haven't had anybody had to conduct work like this on American soil probably since the end of the Civil War. Because all of our other conflicts were fought off of American soil, of course. And so this was the first attack on American soil since the end of the Civil War in 1865. And so therefore, I can say with a straight face that Buscemi did, for lack of a better term, God's work in all of this. And I'm talking about this in terms of a history segment that he wouldn't want me to do. he wouldn't want anyone to do. But of course, it did get out and it did get reported. It's kind of hard to not recognize Steve Buscemi working in a, you know, catastrophic disaster zone. It did get out. I don't believe many pictures of him made it out because I think New Yorkers did respect his wishes to a very large extent. Had this happened anywhere else, I'm not so sure he would have been able to get away with this. But there are very few pictures of him existing out there today, of him in that 2-week period doing this exhausting and extensive work. And this was never reported, but it would not surprise me if he did feed everybody back at Company 55 as they went out on their daily traumatic grind. Needless to say, the fallout from this was awful, but Steve Buscemi was a man who did what he could. Worked the typical 12-hour shift at Ground Zero, which was standard for the situation for anybody. He just wanted to solve. He just wanted to find, as many of the men as he possibly could, who he worked with for those years in the early 80s. And I mean, this is a commitment that, again, he would not want me telling this story. And it's just devotion and care on an unprecedented level. So anyway, that's today's Underrated History with Steve Buscemi, legendary actor and a firefighter to his very core of his being. Despite making it big in Hollywood, he had to come home and he had to help a hurting city through a very difficult time. Your average person in Hollywood is never going to do this. At least not without a horde of cameras following them for publicity's sake. A unique situation by a very unique man. So that's it. It's a very inspiring and also very challenging story to tell. So thank you guys for sticking with me through this. I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow. I don't think I can do anything to top that. But I'll find something. And I always do. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out, homies.